There was a time when he had everything: fame, money, and a permanent spot in the spotlight. He was a man television viewers associated with custom car culture, an empire built from steel, chrome, and horsepower. He turned a personal obsession with cars, music, and vintage style into a career most people only fantasize about. Then, seemingly overnight, Danny Koker disappeared from television without explanation. Casual fans never realized how much was happening away from the cameras. Surprising headlines, serious accusations, legal fights that threatened his business, and a long public silence that left longtime viewers uneasy. What actually happened to Danny Koker? The public only ever saw what made it onto the screen, never what unfolded behind the garage doors. For a man who spent his career giving audiences his best, what came back at him tells a very different story. Danny Koker never studied mechanics in a classroom and never had a famous mentor teaching him the trade. Everything he knows about engines came from hands-on experience, pulling things apart, wrestling with wiring and metal, and eventually learning to reassemble it all better than before. Long before he became known as a star counting cars, his story began not in a professional garage or a TV studio, but in his family's garage as a kid holding a wrench and chasing a big dream. That dream started when he was just 8 years old. While other children his age were playing video games or riding bikes, young Danny was already restoring his first motorcycle. That early project wasn't a passing hobby. It lit a spark that eventually carried him from a small home garage to the lights of Las Vegas and, eventually, into households around the world. Before he was building custom rides for celebrities or running several businesses at once, Danny had another side few fans knew about. He was a natural performer. His family owned a local television station in Las Vegas, Channel 33, giving him early, direct exposure to how the entertainment business actually worked: cameras, sound, production, presentation. That backstage knowledge would shape who he later became. That's also how Count Cool Rider came to be. Long before counting cars, Danny dressed up as a vampire-style horror host and introduced late-night scary movies on Channel 33, complete with makeup, a cape, and old-school showman energy. It wasn't just a costume bit. It reflected his natural blend of showmanship, charisma, and creative flair, all of which set him up for something much bigger. In 2012, that mix of car expertise, broadcast know-how, and larger-than-life personality found its outlet. Counting Cars premiered on History Channel. The show wasn't only about restoring old vehicles. It focused on the stories behind each car, the effort behind every build, and the close relationships within Danny's crew. It celebrated craftsmanship in a way audiences responded to immediately. From the first episode, viewers noticed something genuine in Danny's presence, whether he was pulling a rusted wreck out of a junkyard or building something one-of-kind for a music legend. The series ran from 2012 to 2020 and became one of the most popular car restoration shows on TV, largely because of Danny's unmistakable personality, wild hair, sunglasses, and total commitment to the craft. But the show was only part of the picture. Behind the scenes, Danny was building a broader business empire. His shop, Count's Customs, became the center of it all, a Las Vegas destination that functioned as part workshop, part museum, drawing car enthusiasts and tourists from around the globe. He later opened Count's Vamp Rock Bar and Grill, a live music venue blending his two great passions, cars and rock and roll, which became known for its live shows and nightlife. He didn't stop there, later launching Count's Tattoo Company inside the Rio Hotel and Casino. Danny's client list grew to include major names in rock music, Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, and Ozzy Osbourne among them. People who trusted him not just with a vehicle, but with something closer to their personal legacy. And his talents weren't confined to the garage. Music has always run through his life. He's the lead singer of the hard rock band Count 77, pouring the same intensity into performing that he brings to restoration work. Notably, he once performed at Carnegie Hall at just 11 years old. Even someone with that much drive and talent, though, isn't immune to setbacks, and in recent years, Danny's business world faced real turbulence. For years, Count's Customs was more than a shop. It was the core of Danny's world, built on hard work and genuine passion. But even solid enterprises can develop cracks that don't show until it's too late. The trouble arrived quietly, through paperwork and legal filings. It began with a complaint from a couple, Jeanette and Paul Hurt, who brought their vision for a car to Counts Customs, trusting the shop based on what they'd seen on television. They left a 1967 Ford Mustang coupe with the shop and paid $50,000 for the restoration. According to their complaint, they were told the project would air on counting cars, then later learned it wouldn't be televised. When they eventually checked on their vehicle, they say no work had been done. The car itself wasn't even the model originally agreed upon, and it came back in worse condition than when they dropped it off. They also allege that despite requesting a refund, the shop withheld their payment. The public outcome of that case remains undisclosed, but the reputational damage to the business, and likely to Danny personally, was real, given how much of his identity was tied to delivering on his word. That wasn't the only legal issue. A second, more personal crisis came from inside the business itself, involving a man named Joseph Frontier, who had been entrusted with handling the shop's finances and records while Danny focused on the cars, the cameras, and the customers. Instead, Frontier was accused of embezzling more than $75,000 from the company. Reports allege the money went toward personal expenses, including a down payment on a Range Rover and personal airline travel. Not accidental errors, but deliberate misuse of company funds. The fallout included late payment penalties and tax complications for Counts Customs, along with the broader chaos of untangling disorganized financial records while trying to keep the business running. What made it worse was a sense of betrayal. Frontier had reportedly been recommended by Motor Trend, formerly Velocity, the network that aired counting cars. Danny had trusted that referral. After the embezzlement came to light, he reportedly went beyond firing Frontier and filed a lawsuit against a recruiting company, alleging it failed to disclose concerning information about Frontier's past conduct at previous jobs. By the time the situation became public, Frontier had reportedly relocated out of Nevada, complicating efforts to pursue criminal charges and pushing much of the dispute into civil court. To outsiders, it may have looked like a routine business scandal. To Danny, it was personal, a direct hit to the name and dream he'd built since childhood. The aftermath brought legal costs and considerable damage control, but he kept the business running. Unfortunately, this wasn't the last challenge to his public image. Fame has a way of attracting rumors, and even someone with Danny's track record hasn't been immune. One persistent claim that circulated online for years was that he'd been arrested for possessing a controlled substance. It began online and spread without solid evidence behind it, eventually snowballing into a full controversy. However, no official records have ever confirmed such an arrest, and there's no documented legal basis for the claims. Danny's naturally private nature. He doesn't share much of his personal life publicly or rush to correct every rumor, may have unintentionally let the story linger. He did address it directly in one interview, saying that people seemed to think he was constantly getting arrested, which he found frustrating, describing himself instead as a family-oriented, faith-driven person focused on his team and community. Separately, some viewers began questioning how authentic counting cars really was, a common question for long-running reality shows. Fans pointed to deals that wrapped up too quickly, clients arriving with vague ideas and leaving with flawless custom build, and reactions that occasionally seemed rehearsed. Some online commenters speculated that certain builds were staged or that some,